All right, so let's talk about August 2nd, because on that day, just one economic report came out, and boom, it completely flipped the script for the entire U.S. economy. What everyone thought was a story of steady strength suddenly looks a whole lot more fragile. Okay, let's get into it.
You know, for months, the big story on Wall Street was all about confidence. The consensus was, hey, the U.S. economy is strong. It can handle anything, right? Whether it was trade tensions or high interest rates from the Fed. Well, that entire belief, it just got shattered by one single report.
And this is the number that did all the damage. Just $73,000. That's the official number of new jobs added in the U.S. in July. And when that number hit the screens, it sent a shockwave, a real shockwave, through the markets, creating a brand new conflict for investors and for the Fed.
Okay, so 73,000 is a pretty bad number, right? But believe it or not, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Once you start digging into the details of this report, the story gets even worse. So first off, let's just put this miss into perspective. Economists, they were looking for about 110,000 new jobs. The actual result, 73,000. That's not just a little off, it's a huge shortfall that pretty much nobody saw coming.
And then comes the 1-2 punch. The report also went back and revised the numbers for the previous months. And get this, a stunning 260,000 jobs we thought were created in May and June, they just vanished. Poof. Erased from the record. This tells us the weakness we're seeing now isn't new. It's been quietly building for a while.
And if you dig even deeper, you find more warning signs. The unemployment rate, it ticked up to 4.2%. But here's something really concerning. A data quality issue. The number of people actually responding to the government survey has dropped below 60%. That makes you wonder, how accurate are these numbers really? And the market felt it immediately. The fear and greed index just tanked, going from greed all the way down to neutral. Bloomberg summed it up perfectly. Investor confidence has been shattered.
So with all this bad news, all eyes immediately pivot to the U.S. Federal Reserve. And let me tell you, they are now in a really tough spot. Kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, facing pressure from two totally opposite directions. And just so we're all on the same page, when we say the Fed, we're really talking about the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee. These are the folks who get together, debate, and then vote on where interest rates are headed.
Right, so the Fed is basically fighting a two-front war right now. On one side, you have inflation. Their main job is to keep prices stable, but a key inflation metric is still at 2.8%, which is well above their 2% target. But on the other side, you have this jobs report screaming that the economy is slowing down fast. And the Fed's other job is to aim for maximum employment. So what do? Do they keep rates high to crush inflation, or do they cut them to support jobs?
Well, the market isn't waiting around to find out. It has already placed its bets. After this report, the odds of a rate cut in September just skyrocketed to 90%. We even heard from an analyst at Citigroup who said that if the Fed had seen this data a little earlier, a cut would have been on the table. And now, a big cut is being considered.
Okay, so a terrible jobs report, a Fed in a bind. You'd think that's enough drama for 1 week, right? Well, nope. An unexpected political twist just got thrown into the mix, adding a whole new level of complexity and intrigue.
So here's what happened. Fed Governor Adriana Kugler, she has resigned, effective August 8th. Now, her term wasn't supposed to be up until 2026, and the official reason for her leaving is unknown. So now you have this surprise vacancy on the committee right at this super critical moment. And of course, this news immediately got political. Former President Donald J. Trump took to social media, using the resignation to put even more pressure on Fed Chair Jerome Powell, stating he should follow Kugler's lead and demanding, quote, a big rate cut now. So let's recap. We've got bad economic news. We've got intense political pressure to cut rates. That sounds like a recipe for disaster for the stock market, doesn't it? Well, history actually tells a very different, kind of counterintuitive story. You know, if you look back, there's a pretty clear pattern here. Think about it. The dot-com crash in 2000, the financial crisis in 2008, the COVID shock in 2020. What did they all have in common? After the shock, the Fed stepped in, cut rates, and every single time the stock market eventually started a powerful rally. So the big question today is, will this employment shock play out the same way?
So why does this happen? How can bad news be good news for stocks? Well, it all comes down to market psychology. The market is always trying to look ahead. So first, the shock hits. And yeah, prices drop. But almost right away, investors start thinking, okay, this is bad, which means the Fed is going to have to do something. They start anticipating the stimulus. And when the Fed finally does act and cuts rates, it's like a green light for investors. They start buying, and that's what sparks the rally, often way before the actual economy gets better.
All right, this whole situation is developing really fast. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely crucial. So let's wrap this up by looking at exactly what you should be watching for on the road ahead.
First, keep your eyes peeled for the ISM Services Index coming out next week. That's another big clue about the economy's health. Then, of course, all attention will be on the September FOMC meeting to see what they actually do with rates. We'll also be watching market sentiment. Does fear take over? And finally, the yield curve. If we see short-term rates keep falling, that is a classic recession warning sign.
And all of this, it all boils down to the one huge question that every single investor is grappling with right now. Is this jobs report a classic buy the dip signal? Is this the bad news that's actually good news because the Fed is about to step in? Or is this a real warning sign of a much deeper, much colder economic chill ahead, one that even Fed rate cuts can't fix? The answer to that question is going to define the markets for the rest of the year.